Welcome back to Consider Life. I haven't posted anything in a while since Charlie Kirk was killed. Mostly because my experience on social media is that people in the comment section are stupid and rude, which I don't like to expose myself to. So if you comment on this video, if you watch it all the way through, just don't be stupid or rude. You know, I don't think that's asking too much. So today I wanted to do a short video because I'm beginning this spring semester and I'm doing my syllabi videos on metaphysics and the philosophy of religion. And as I was thinking about the content of the metaphysics course, I was reminded of this quote by Joseph Owens, who is one of the texts that we use in our book. It's Elementary Christian Metaphysics. It is not elementary, but I will read this for you because he talks about the difference between different and diverse. He says this: the actual composing in which being is seen to consist is obviously particularized in each instance. In every occurrence in the real world, it is a composing of this particular matter with this particular form, or of this particular subject with this particular quality or other characteristic, or of this particular individual with this specific or generic nature. This means that the being of sensible things is not just different in every case, in every moment, but is diverse in the fullest sense of the term. Things are said technically to be different if they coincide in a specific or generic trait, while they are distinct through some further characteristic. Diverse is a wider term and applies to things that do not coincide in any specific or generic feature. All men coincide in their human nature, though they differ as individuals, but in their being, they are diverse. So what Owens is saying there is that when he talks about things being different, although coinciding in a specific or a generic nature, a specific, he means based on the species, right? So his example was two men coincide in their humanity, but one may be a lawyer, one may be a musician. One may be tall, one may be short, right? They coincide in their nature, and yet they are different in some of their characteristics, say height. So I brought these as examples. I think the musician and the lawyer are probably, but lemons and limes. Lemons and limes, we say, are different because they're both fruit. They're both citrus fruits, and yet one's green, one's yellow, right? They differ in some other attribute, right? So that is what difference is, at least according to Owens. Diversity is something else. To be diverse means to be, we might say, existentially unique or particularized, right? That is, I coincide with my brother in terms of our humanity, our nature, but I don't coincide with him in our being, right? I could pass out of existence, I could die, and his existence is completely separate from mine. And so this distinction between diverse and different, right? It raises in my mind the importance of understanding the specifically existential metaphysics of diversity. The reason I say that is that diversity has taken on this notion in culture that really doesn't bear any level of genuine scrutiny. And given what Owens is saying there is that when we look at people and we say this person's rich, this person's poor, this person's black, this person's not black, right? According to what Owens just said, Owens would look at that and say, yeah, those are just differences. That's not true diversity. True diversity comes at the level of existence, not these sort of form, matter, accidents, right? These are Aristotelian categories. And the way that pays itself out is in a number of things. The first thing is this, and I want to drag this sort of sterile metaphysical commentary into the direction of Christian ethics, right? So what does this have to do with Christian ethics? Christianity per se, and then what that Christianity tells us about living the morally upright life, right? So that would be a Christian ethical context. The Christian part of that is this: in this existential mode of diversity, is that and Owens says this elsewhere in that same passage. I didn't read it, but every existent, right? Every existing thing is caused to be. Every human being is caused to be uniquely by God every moment of their being. This is called the doctrine of divine concurrence, if you care. So, given a Christian existentialism that every individual is caused to be every moment of their being, and that moment, that metaphysical moment of existence is diverse. It doesn't coincide with anyone else's. It leads to several conclusions. The first is that our life, my life, is actually, in terms of this metaphysical analysis, is actually incomparable. That is, it can't be compared with anyone else's existence. Not even another 48-year-old white Anglo-American philosopher living in the Midwest, right? Regardless of how many common coinciding attributes we have, there is an existential diversity to every single individual human being, right? And that is uniquely caused by God. Following from that, because it is caused by God and not some other creature, the existence of every other human being caused by God should give us pause in rejecting that human being, right? Because they are an effect. They're an effect of the divine, and therefore, at least in God's estimation, they have value. And so if we find ourselves rejecting a person, that is, this is the notion of hatred. That is, this person shouldn't be, or I would rather that this person not exist. Now you've set yourself at odds with the Creator, who has created them and is sustaining them in their being every moment of their being. So it's a ground for acceptance of others in their not just differences, but their absolute existential diversity. And at least one author, Joseph Pieper, in his Theological Virtues, talks about how one of the core elements of love is acceptance. It's, oh, there you are. It's good that you're here, right? And so I marvel at the way in which the notion of diversity has sort of overtaken the culture. And when it boils down to it, it's not true diversity. It's just differences. But if we called it differences, that would imply that there's something the same about myself and the person with whom I disagree, namely our humanity. But the final thing is this. I was listening to this clip by a guy who was talking with Tucker Carlson.
I know there's a judgment. I don't think there's a judgment. I know there's a final judgment, for sure.
Really?
So for me, it's not even...
I think you're right, but what convinced you of that?
Because I just was in the spirit world. I saw my divine judgment, and my divine judgment was hell. That was like my divine judgment. Before then, so I know there's a final judgment. I know the accounting is in the human heart. It's not in the words. It's not in what you say. It's not in how holy you can be and how you can tell everybody else they're not holy and you're Mr. Holier than thou. That's the human heart is going to be weighed and measured by God. In my opinion, it's Jesus Christ. And, in my opinion, it's Christianity and Jesus Christ. But I'm not I'm not into the apologetics where we argue and mind all day about what it is. I think the human heart's going to be weighed. And that's something that God's going to determine at the judgment. I know that I'm accountable for everything.
And what he says there ties in with this notion of existential diversity, that no person's active being, we'll say, coincides with any other person's active being. It makes them a unique particular existent. But the final thing is, and this is what ties into this guy's interview, the final thing is the notion of accountability, right? One of the things that identity politics tries to do is it tries to praise or vilify groups of individuals. And what this guy's experience or testimony or near death or whatever you want to call it, reminds me of, in the context of this existential diversity, is that everyone's life, everyone is a steward of their own life, and that's it. I saw somebody asking about Christian denominations. Is this a good denomination? Is that a good denomination? And one of the responses that struck me, at least my reaction, was that, well, God doesn't justify groups of people, right? Or put it this way, everyone's life stands or falls on what they do with Jesus Christ, his lordship, his offer of salvation, his payment of sin, his righteousness that he imputes to us. Everyone individually is responsible for that. This notion of existential diversity heightens and clarifies how it is that God has given the gift of existence to every one of us diversely. That my being does not stand or fall with the being of another, and my accountability for that life, for that period of existence in this state, rises or falls with me alone. And I think that's something that is either lost or ignored or actively denied by those who are propagating this sort of identity politics. So anyway, heading into the spring semester, looking at the metaphysics syllabus, and decided to bring up this existential notion of diversity as it emerges in Owens, and then as it is potentially applicable to culture. This is kind of what this channel is about. It's just me thinking through and reacting to Christianity and culture, given my background as a philosopher. Okay, we'll see you next time.